Facility Incident Report #A117. Date, April 12, 2025. Reporting personnel, Dr. Eliza Chun, Antimatter Containment Division. Classification, Level 3 Restricted. I'm documenting this separately from the official channels. Something happened today that I can't explain, and I need to track this methodically. If anyone finds these notes, please forward them to Dr. Marcus Vega in quantum mechanics. He'll understand the implications. The anomaly first appeared during routine antimatter containment procedures in Lab 7. The facility has been pushing us to increase yield from the particle accelerator. Director Williams calls it optimizing research outcomes, but we all know it's about funding. More antimatter production means more military interest, which means more grants. Simple equation. I was alone for the evening shift. The lab stretches long and sterile under the fluorescent lighting, all white surfaces and gleaming equipment. The containment chamber sits at the center like a metal heart, its magnetic field generators humming with that distinct vibration you feel more than hear. I've grown accustomed to the clinical solitude of night shifts, just me, the equipment, and the soft glow of monitors displaying particle collision data. The accelerator had been running a 10-hour sequence. Nothing unusual in the readings. Temperature nominal, magnetic containment stable, particle decay rates within expected parameters. I was updating the logs when I noticed something in my peripheral vision. My shadow on the wall. It moved. Not with me, independently. I froze, watching my silhouette against the wall. For 3 seconds, maybe 4, my shadow's arm raised while mine remained motionless at my side. Then it snapped back to normal alignment, matching my posture perfectly as if nothing had happened. I blinked hard. Fatigue, I thought. I've been pulling doubles since Dr. Harmon transferred out last month. Sleep deprivation causes visual hallucinations. Every researcher knows this. I made a note to request reduced hours and continued with the monitoring sequence. 20 minutes later, it happened again. I was at the primary terminal, checking containment field integrity. The overhead lights cast my shadow across the floor and up the opposite wall. I hadn't moved, but my shadow, it seemed to stretch, elongate. Its proportions distorted subtly, the head tilting at an impossible angle. This lasted approximately 7 seconds before returning to normal. No sleep deprivation explains that. I checked all the light sources in the lab. Nothing unusual, no equipment malfunctions, no power fluctuations. The antimatter containment readings remained stable. But when I reviewed the particle detector logs, something caught my attention. A microsecond surge in tachyon emissions coinciding exactly with the shadow anomaly. Tachyons are theoretical particles that might travel faster than light. We've detected trace amounts during high-energy antimatter experiments, but never in significant concentrations. According to quantum field theory, excessive tachyon presence could indicate instability in localized space-time. I'm getting ahead of myself. These are observations, not conclusions. The third incident occurred during my final checks before handover. I was documenting the overnight readings when the containment field monitor showed a brief fluctuation, a 0.03% variance in the magnetic bottle. Negligible by safety standards, but unusual for our calibrated equipment. As I leaned forward to examine the readout, my shadow on the terminal, it wasn't leaning. It stood straight, seemingly detached from my movements. When I raised my hand to adjust the monitor, my shadow's hand remained down. When I turned my head, my shadow remained facing forward. For 17 seconds, I counted. My shadow and I were desynchronized. Then the containment field stabilized and my shadow snapped back to normal. The tachyon detector showed another spike, larger this time. I should have reported this immediately. Protocol dictates any anomalous phenomena near antimatter containment be documented and escalated. But what would I write? My shadow is moving independently. I'd be assigned to psychiatric evaluation before I finished the sentence. So I checked everything else first. Radiation levels normal. Neutrino emissions consistent with standard operations. Gravitational measurements unchanged. Every diagnostic returned normal parameters. The morning shift arrived at 0700. Dr. Marcus Vega took over, noting my exhaustion but not pressing when I deflected his concerns. As I was leaving, Captain Reed entered with 2 uniformed personnel I didn't recognize, military observers, becoming increasingly common since we achieved stable antimatter containment last quarter. Something about Reed's presence unsettled me. He nodded curtly as we passed in the corridor, but his eyes lingered too long. Does he know something? Or am I becoming paranoid? Outside, the The research facility's concrete exterior looked imposing against the sunrise. The entire complex sits isolated in the desert, miles from the nearest town, a precaution given our work with antimatter. The morning light stretched my shadow long across the parking lot. Normal. Synchronized. I watched it for nearly a minute before getting into my car. At home, I reviewed the security footage I'd quietly downloaded from Lab 7. Standard procedure captures all activities around the antimatter containment chamber. The video shows me working at the stations, moving between terminals. It shows my shadow, but the footage doesn't show the anomalies. In the recording, my shadow behaves normally throughout the shift, perfectly aligned with my movements. Either the camera couldn't capture the phenomenon, or the alternative is worse, that what I experienced was subjective, a hallucination, the beginning of a breakdown. Except for one detail that confirms I'm not losing my mind, the tachyon spikes in the data logs. They happened. They're recorded. They coincide precisely with my observations of the shadow anomalies. Something is happening at the intersection of antimatter and ordinary matter. Something the equipment can detect, but not fully measure. Something that manifests visually as distortions in my shadow. I've been researching shadow phenomena in quantum physics. Theoretical papers suggest that in systems with enough energy density, shadows could represent two-dimensional projections of higher-dimensional interactions. If antimatter truly is regular matter moving backward through time, as some theorists propose, then perhaps these shadow anomalies represent temporal misalignments, moments where the antimatter's temporal field affects ordinary matter's properties. I sound like a lunatic, but the tachyon data supports this hypothesis. Tonight I return for another shift. I've calibrated additional sensors to record a broader spectrum of quantum phenomena. If the shadow anomalies recur, I'll have more data. One concerning note: reviewing my keycard logs, someone accessed my workstation at 2:17 a.m., 3 hours after I left. The system identifies the credentials as mine, but I was home asleep. I've checked for data breaches or file access. Nothing obvious, but I can't shake the feeling that someone knows what I've seen, what I've recorded. Tomorrow, Captain Reed is bringing a full military observation team for what Director Williams called a routine evaluation. Nothing about this feels routine. If these shadow anomalies are real, if antimatter is somehow affecting the fundamental properties of reality in ways we haven't predicted, the implications extend beyond physics, beyond comprehension. The universe might be far more unstable than we've ever imagined. End report, Ichin. Facility Incident Report #A118. Date, April 13, 2025. Reporting personnel, Dr. Eliza Chun, Antimatter Containment Division. Classification, Level 3 Restricted. The events of the past 24 hours have accelerated beyond anything I could have anticipated. I've calibrated my personal equipment to record everything now, storing backups off the facility network. I can't trust the official systems anymore. The military presence has increased significantly since yesterday. When I arrived for my shift, 3 unmarked vehicles were parked outside the restricted section. The security checkpoint had 2 additional guards, both with military posture despite their civilian contractor uniforms. They scrutinized my credentials longer than usual. "Busy night ahead, Dr. Chin?" one asked, studying my face rather than my ID. "Standard containment monitoring," I replied, trying to appear casual. "Nothing special." His eyes lingered on mine for a beat too long. "Captain Reed mentioned you're one of our most attentive technicians." My heart rate spiked, but I maintained composure. "Just doing my job." The lab was different when I entered. The usual sterile whiteness remained, but subtle changes stood out immediately. New monitoring equipment installed along the western wall. A second terminal beside my primary workstation. A small camera mounted in the corner, angled toward the antimatter containment chamber. Dr. Marcus was finishing his shift, looking haggard. Dark circles under his eyes, hands slightly tremulous as he logged out of the system. "Rough day?" I asked, setting down my bag. He glanced at the new camera, then back at me. "Field fluctuations. Nothing critical, just persistent." Before I could question further, the door opened. Captain Reed entered, followed by a woman in a lab coat I didn't recognize. Her badge identified her as Dr. Sophia Williams, Director. "Dr. Chun," Reed nodded. "This is Director Williams. She'll be observing parts of your shift tonight." Williams was tall, with sharp features and silver-streaked hair pulled into a severe bun. Her lab coat was pristine, too clean for someone who did actual lab work. "We're implementing enhanced monitoring protocols," she explained, voice clipped and professional, "given the sensitivity of our current antimatter yields." "Of course," I said, while internally questioning why the facility director would suddenly take interest in routine containment shifts. "Any specific concerns?" Reed and Williams exchanged a glance that lasted microseconds but conveyed volumes. "Just procedural updates," Reed said dismissively. "Dr. Williams will explain the new measurement parameters." Marcus slipped out during this exchange, but not before giving me a barely perceptible head shake. A warning. Williams walked me through the enhanced protocols. Additional tachyon measurements, gravitational wave monitoring, quantum field analysis at 30-second intervals rather than the standard 5 minutes, all focusing on the phenomena I had observed yesterday, without explicitly acknowledging them. "These readings should be logged separately," she instructed, indicating the new terminal. "This system reports directly to our secure database." Translation: this system reports directly to whatever military project is really running here. Williams left after the briefing. Reed lingered, watching me initialize the monitoring sequence. "Anything unusual to report from yesterday's shift, Dr. Chin?" he asked, his tone casual, but his eyes sharp. I kept my focus on the terminal. Everything was within standard parameters. "No anomalies?" "No." "Visual disturbances?" My fingers paused momentarily on the keyboard. "Nothing worth reporting." Reed smiled thinly. "If you do notice anything unusual, however minor, I expect immediate notification. National security concerns supersede standard reporting protocols." After he left, I sat motionless for several minutes, processing. They know. Maybe not everything, but enough to implement targeted monitoring. Enough to have the facility director personally brief me. Enough to explicitly link my observations to national security. The first reading anomaly occurred at 2147. The tachyon detector registered a spike 3 times larger than yesterday's. The antimatter containment field showed a 0.12% fluctuation, still within safety parameters but concerning. The new quantum field monitor displayed patterns I've never seen before, ripples in the baseline that shouldn't be possible in stable spacetime. I looked for my shadow. It behaved normally. By 2215, the readings stabilized, but the quantum field monitor continued showing those impossible ripples. I documented everything as instructed, knowing the data was being transmitted in real time to whatever oversight team Reed had assembled. At 2302, I noticed something in the particle collision data. The standard model predicts certain decay patterns when particles interact with antimatter. Our readings showed decay patterns that matched the predictions exactly, too exactly. Like someone had replaced actual readings with theoretical models. I cross-referenced historical data. For the past week, the collision readings had gradually shifted from normal statistical variance to picture-perfect theoretical results. Someone had been tampering with the data feeds, gradually enough to avoid setting off automated alerts. What are they hiding? At 2347, I was checking the magnetic containment field integrity when movement caught my eye. Not my shadow this time. The shadows of the equipment, the centrifuge, the cooling apparatus, the terminal itself, shifted slightly. Not dramatically, just a subtle misalignment with their physical sources. The effect lasted 8 seconds before normalizing. The tachyon detector remained silent. No spikes. But the quantum field monitor showed those same impossible ripples, stronger now. I accessed the security footage, making sure to use the original system, not the new one installed today. The camera showed nothing unusual. The shadows in the recording remained perfectly aligned with their sources. But I had seen it. I took out my phone and positioned it to record a time-lapse of the lab. If the phenomenon repeated, I would have my own evidence. Just after midnight, I made my most disturbing discovery. Reviewing the containment field logs for the past month, I found a pattern. Every 3 days, almost exactly, the field experienced a microsecond fluctuation. Too brief to trigger alerts, too consistent to be random. Looking further back, the pattern extended to the very beginning of our antimatter production, but the intervals were gradually decreasing. 3 days, then 2.97 days, now 2.86 days between fluctuations. The next predicted fluctuation would be tomorrow, at approximately 2:13. I was still processing this when Marcus returned unexpectedly. He looked worse than before, his face pale. "Forgot my notes," he said loudly, then leaned close while retrieving a notebook from his desk. His voice dropped to a whisper. be careful. They're watching for specific reactions. Don't let them see you notice. Notice what? I whispered back. The shadows. They're measuring how much we can perceive. Before I could ask more, the door opened again. Reed stood there, expression neutral but eyes calculating. Problem, Dr. Vega? Just collecting my research notes, Marcus replied, holding up the notebook. Heading home now. Reed nodded, waiting until Marcus had left before addressing me. Everything functioning properly, Dr. Chin? I gestured to the monitors. All readings nominal. Excellent. He remained by the door. Director Williams has authorized me to observe overnight operations. I'll be in the monitoring room next door if you require assistance. After he left, I found a note tucked into my workstation, presumably left by Marcus. Field instability increasing. Memory cards wiped daily. Trust no one's shadow. I'm writing this report in the 3-minute window between security camera sweeps. Something fundamental is happening with the antimatter. Something the military knows about and is monitoring, not preventing. The question I keep returning to, if my shadow moved independently yesterday, whose consciousness was controlling it? And more disturbing, if I could see the dissonance while others couldn't, what does that mean about my perception? About my reality? I'm staying for another shift. The predicted field fluctuation at 2:13 might reveal answers. Or confirm my growing fear that we've torn something in the fabric of existence that was never meant to be torn. End report, Ichin. Facility Incident Report #A119. Date, April 14th, 2025. Reporting personnel, Dr. Eliza Chun, Antimatter Containment Division. Classification, Level 3 Restricted. I shouldn't be writing this. Every keystroke feels like a risk. But someone needs to document what's happening here, beyond the sanitized official reports. If I disappear, at least there will be a record. The predicted fluctuation at 2:13 came precisely on schedule. I was prepared, having calibrated every sensor I could access without raising suspicion. The antimatter containment field registered a 0.27% variance, more than double yesterday's anomaly. The new equipment installed by Reed's team recorded everything, but I had my own sensors running in parallel. What I saw defies conventional physics. At exactly 2 hours, 13 minutes and 6 seconds, the shadows throughout the lab, of equipment, furniture, my own body, seemed to waver, as if cast by a fluctuating light source. But the lab's lighting remained constant. For 17 seconds, every shadow in the room elongated toward the containment chamber, like iron filings drawn to a magnet. The tachyon detector went wild. Not just spikes, but sustained readings, suggesting a temporary opening of what theoretical physicists call a closed time-like curve, a localized loop in the fabric of space-time. Then the facility-wide alert system activated. Not the blaring emergency sirens, but a soft, pulsing tone that emanated from the overhead speakers. Attention. Field instability detected. Containment protocols engaged. All personnel maintain positions. The voice was artificial, emotionless. The message repeated twice before silence returned. By the time Reed burst into the lab 10 seconds later, everything had returned to normal. The shadows were aligned correctly. The tachyon readings had stabilized. Only the quantum field monitor still showed those impossible ripples, fading slowly like concentric circles in disturbed water. What happened? Reed demanded, his veneer of casual authority gone. Automated alert for field instability. I said calmly, though my heart was pounding. The system stabilized the fluctuation. He studied the monitors, then me. You didn't touch anything? Protocol dictates non-intervention during automated corrections. His posture relaxed slightly. Good. That's good. He examined the readings from his team's equipment. Log everything. Director Williams will want a full report. After Reed left, I checked the facility systems. The alert had been isolated to Lab 7, only my lab. No other researchers would have heard it. That seemed deliberate. When my shift ended at 0700, Marcus was waiting to relieve me. His eyes were bloodshot, his movements jittery. We performed the standard handover procedure mechanically, aware of the cameras watching us. As I passed him my access card, he pressed something small into my palm, a micro SD card. Compare the spectral analyses, he whispered. Both sides of the mirror. I nodded slightly and pocketed the card. Reed was observing us through the glass partition of the monitoring room. Instead of going home, I diverted to the facility's library, an antiquated room filled with physical journals and reference materials that predated digital archiving. Few people used it anymore. It was the one place I knew had no surveillance equipment. Budget cuts had deemed it non-essential to security protocols. There, I reviewed the data on Marcus's card. It contained shadow measurements from his own shifts, spectral analyses of the shadows in Lab 7 compared to standard light-blocking patterns. The divergence was subtle but unmistakable. The shadows in the lab weren't just visual anomalies, they absorbed light wavelengths that should have passed through them. They had substance, or at least affected physical reality in ways shadows shouldn't. Most disturbing was Marcus's personal log, documenting his own experiences. April 11th, first noticed shadow discrepancy during calibration. My hand's shadow moved before my hand did. Duration, 3 seconds. April 12th, shadow phenomena increasing. Documented 7 instances. Duration extending each time. Security footage shows no anomalies. April 13th, others affected now. Saw Taylor's shadow separate completely for 12 seconds. She didn't notice. No one else reacted. Field instability alert triggered, but was quickly dismissed as system error. April 14th, I'm being followed. Someone accessed my apartment. Nothing taken, but things moved slightly. My shadow sometimes remains still when I move. I feel watched by it. Security increased around antimatter containment without explanation. The final entry was timestamped just 6 hours ago. Something is coming through. The antimatter isn't just particles, it's a tear in space-time. They know this. They're measuring the tears, not containing them. Chen's shadow anomalies match mine exactly. We're both seeing it. Why only us? What makes us different? The field instability isn't a malfunction, it's a door opening. I closed the file, my hands trembling. Marcus had been experiencing the same phenomena a day before me. His documentation confirmed my observations weren't hallucinations. But his paranoia was advancing faster than mine. Was that my future in another day? I returned to the main facility, passing through the atrium where researchers gathered between shifts. Dr. Taylor was there, the colleague Marcus had mentioned. She looked normal, engaged in conversation with another researcher. But her shadow on the polished floor, it wasn't matching her gestures perfectly. The lag was milliseconds, barely perceptible. No one else seemed to notice. In the cafeteria, I noticed Captain Reed sitting with Director Williams and an unfamiliar man in a dark suit. They were deep in conversation, faces serious. As I walked past with my coffee, their discussion abruptly ceased. The man in the suit studied me with clinical interest, like a specimen under glass. "Dr. Chen," Williams called. A moment, I approached their table, hyper-aware of how exposed I was. "This is Dr. Harmon from Oversight," Williams said, indicating the suited man. "He's interested in your observations during last night's field instability." Harmon's gaze was unnervingly steady. "I understand you were present for the full event, Dr. Chen. Did you notice any visual anomalies during the fluctuation?" "A test. They were testing whether I would report the shadow phenomena. The containment field showed standard chromatic aberration during stabilization," I said carefully. "Nothing outside expected parameters. No unusual shadows? No visual distortions?" Harmon pressed. "Nothing worth reporting." I echoed my earlier response to Reed. Harmon's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. Disappointment? Relief? Interesting. Dr. Vega reported quite different observations. My stomach tightened. Marcus tends to work himself to exhaustion. It affects perception. "Indeed," Harmon said softly. "Perception is everything in our line of work." I excused myself, feeling their eyes follow me out of the cafeteria. Marcus was in danger, and by extension, so was I. They knew we were seeing the shadows. They were measuring our reactions, our willingness to report the phenomena. But why? What purpose did this surveillance serve? Back in my apartment, I swept for listening devices, finding nothing but still feeling watched. The shadows in my living room seemed deeper than they should be, the darkness more absolute. When I moved, I could swear my shadow hesitated before following. I've hidden copies of these reports in multiple locations. Tomorrow I'll attempt to speak with Marcus away from the facility. He knows something more, something about why we can see these anomalies when others can't. The antimatter experiments were supposed to advance clean energy production. But Marcus's conclusion feels horrifyingly plausible. We're not containing anything. We're opening something, a door to somewhere else. And something is coming through. End report, Chen. Facility Incident Report #A120. Date, April 15th, 2025. Reporting personnel, Dr. Eliza Chun, Antimatter Containment Division. Classification, Level 3 Restricted. I can't find Marcus. He didn't show up for his shift today. His apartment is empty, not just unoccupied, but cleared out, as if he never existed. When I asked about him, people looked at me strangely. Dr. Vega transferred last month, they said. The same response from everyone, word for word. Like a script. But I spoke with him yesterday. I have his data card. I'm not imagining this. I arrived early for my shift, hoping to catch Marcus before he left. Instead, I found Dr. Taylor at his workstation, calmly reviewing containment protocols as if she'd always been assigned there. "Where's Dr. Vega?" I asked. Taylor looked confused. "Who?" "Marcus Vega. This is his station." She shook her head. "I've been assigned this station for 3 weeks, since Dr. Harmon requested additional oversight." Dr. Harmon, the suited man from Oversight, the same one who had specifically mentioned Marcus's reports yesterday. "I spoke with Marcus yesterday," I insisted. "He gave me his research notes." Taylor's expression shifted subtly, concern, but not for Marcus. For me. "Dr. Chin, are you feeling all right? There's no Marcus Vega on staff here. Never has been." I pulled out my phone to show her a picture of us from the lab holiday party 4 months ago. The image was there, but Marcus wasn't. Just me standing alone, smiling awkwardly at the camera as if posing with an invisible colleague. Cold dread washed over me. I excused myself and went to the HR office, requesting Marcus's personnel file. The system showed no record of him. I tried the security logs, searching for his access card activity. Nothing. Except there was a gap. Access records for Lab 7 showed an unexplained 17-minute interruption yesterday, precisely when I'd been reviewing the data in the library. Enough time to purge specific records. I returned to the lab to find Captain Reed waiting with Taylor. His expression was professionally concerned. "Dr. Chun, Dr. Taylor mentioned you were experiencing some confusion this morning. Where is Marcus Vega?" I demanded. Reed exchanged a glance with Taylor. "Dr. Chun, I think you should take today off. You've been working excessive hours lately. Fatigue can cause significant cognitive disruptions when dealing with quantum phenomena." "I'm not hallucinating. Marcus Vega worked here. He was studying the shadow anomalies, just like I am." Reed's expression hardened. "What shadow anomalies, Dr. Chin?" I realized my mistake immediately. In my agitation, I'd revealed knowledge I'd been carefully concealing. "The visual distortions during field instability events," I backpedaled. "The chromatic aberrations." "I see." Reed's tone was measured. "Perhaps you should discuss these observations with Director Williams." Her office, 30 minutes. After Reed left, Taylor approached me, keeping her voice low. "Be careful what you say about shadows. Jenkins in containment saw things too. Started talking about it last week. Now he's on medical leave." She walked away before I could respond, leaving me with the first confirmation that others beyond Marcus had noticed the phenomena, and had been removed for acknowledging it. The security camera in the corner whirred softly as it adjusted to track my movements. I made a show of checking equipment while mentally reviewing what evidence I still possessed. Marcus's data card was hidden in my apartment. My personal observations were documented in these reports, stored off-network. The facility could delete Marcus from their records, but they couldn't erase my memory of him. Unless they could. A chilling thought struck me. What if they had technology to alter memories? The antimatter experiments, the shadow phenomena. What if they affected more than physical reality? What if they could rewrite subjective experience? No, that was paranoia talking. I had external evidence, the micro SD card. That was real. On my way to Williams' office, I passed the security monitoring center. Through the glass, I could see feeds from throughout the facility. One screen showed Lab 7, empty now except for the containment chamber. As I watched, the shadow of the chamber itself shifted, stretching impossibly across the floor, then snapping back to normal proportions. None of the security personnel reacted. Either they didn't see it, or they were trained not to respond. Director Williams was reviewing documents when I entered her office. The wall behind her desk displayed particle collision simulations, beautiful, complex patterns of quantum interactions. "Dr. Chin," she said without looking up. "Captain Reed mentioned you've been seeing things." "I've been observing phenomena during field instability events," I corrected, "as I assume your enhanced monitoring protocols were designed to detect." Williams finally met my eyes. "What exactly do you think you've seen?" "Shadow anomalies. temporal misalignments between objects and their shadows, patterns that suggest localized disruptions in space-time continuity. She studied me for a long moment. And who else have you discussed these observations with? Dr. Vega, I said, watching her reaction closely. But apparently he doesn't exist. Williams sighed, setting down her tablet. Eliza, you're one of our most valuable researchers. Your work on antimatter containment has been exemplary. But these shadow sightings, they're a known psychological response to prolonged exposure to quantum uncertainty principles. The mind tries to visualize quantum superposition in ways it can comprehend. That doesn't explain why you've erased all record of Marcus Vega. There never was a Marcus Vega, she stated flatly. Your mind has constructed this colleague as a way to externalize your own observations. It's not uncommon among quantum researchers. That's why we rotate personnel so frequently. The explanation was plausible. Too plausible, as if prepared in advance. Then explain the field instability alerts, I challenged. The facility-wide announcement 2 nights ago during the 0.27% variance. Williams frowned. There was no facility-wide alert. The system registered a minor fluctuation that self-corrected as designed. I heard it. Field instability detected. Containment protocols engaged. The alerts are automated responses to potential containment issues. They don't indicate actual danger. She leaned forward. I'm concerned about you, Eliza. These delusions about colleagues who don't exist, alerts that never sounded, they suggest quantum cognitive dissociation. I'm not delusional. Of course you don't think you are. William's voice softened with practiced sympathy. I'm assigning you to 3 days of mandatory rest. Dr. Harmon will conduct a psychological evaluation before you return to duty. As if summoned, Dr. Harmon entered without knocking. His shadow preceded him into the room, but it moved wrong. It flowed across the floor like liquid, reforming into a human shape only after Harmon himself was fully in the room. Neither Williams nor Harmon seemed to notice. Dr. Chun, Harmon nodded. I understand you've been experiencing some perceptual anomalies. I couldn't take my eyes off his shadow. It wasn't matching his subtle movements. The shadow's head was turned toward me while Harmon faced Williams. Just tired, I managed. Understandable. The nature of your work is psychologically taxing. Harmon's voice was smooth, reasonable. We'll get you sorted out quickly. As they discussed my condition, I noticed something terrifying on the wall display behind Williams. The particle collision simulation had changed. Now it showed a rendering of the lab, with me standing exactly where I had been 10 minutes ago, looking at the security monitors. The simulation showed my shadow separating from me, stretching toward the antimatter containment chamber. They were recording the shadow phenomena, studying them, using me as an unwitting subject. 3 days rest, Williams repeated. No lab access. Dr. Harmon will check on you tomorrow. I nodded numbly, desperate to escape. As I turned to leave, Harmon added, and Dr. Chin? Perhaps avoid talking to colleagues who don't exist. The taunt was subtle but unmistakable. They knew I wasn't hallucinating. This was all part of their experiment. Outside the facility, the afternoon sun cast my shadow long across the parking lot. I watched it carefully as I walked to my car. For a moment, just a heartbeat, I could have sworn it turned its head to look back at the building while I faced forward. Something is coming through the tear in reality, and now I fear it's using our shadows to do it. End report, Ichin. Personal journal, secure encrypted. Date, April 16th, 2025. Author, Dr. Eliza Chin. I'm no longer using the facility report format. They're monitoring everything. I've switched to a personal encrypted journal on an air-gapped device. I don't know who might find this or when, but I need to document what's happening while I still can. While I'm still me. They're watching my apartment. A black sedan has been parked across the street since I returned from the facility yesterday. Different occupants every few hours, but the vehicle remains. They're not trying to be subtle anymore. I spent all day examining Marcus's data. The micro SD card contains more than I initially realized, months of observations, not just days. He'd been studying the shadow phenomena since January, almost from the beginning of the antimatter stabilization experiments. His documentation is meticulous, scientific, until the final weeks, when his notes become increasingly frantic. The most disturbing discovery wasn't his observations of the shadows, but his analysis of the facility's true purpose. Marcus had accessed restricted documents, security protocols, military communications, project objectives that never appeared in our research briefings. According to these files, the antimatter containment isn't designed to contain at all. It's designed to create controlled tears in space-time. The military isn't interested in antimatter as an energy source. They're interested in what exists in the space between matter and antimatter, the boundary between realities. The field instability alerts aren't warnings. They're measurements of success. What Marcus discovered, what got him erased, was the project's true name, Looking Glass. An experiment to peer into another dimension, perhaps even to create a gateway. And we, the researchers, are as much test subjects as the antimatter itself. They're studying how proximity to these tiers affects human consciousness, how awareness of other dimensional planes manifests in perception. The shadows are manifestations of these tiers, places where our reality overlaps with something else. Something that can perceive us before we perceive it. At 2:16 p.m., the facility-wide alert system activated on my phone, despite being miles from the lab. Attention. Field instability detected. Containment protocols engaged. All personnel maintain positions. I wasn't supposed to receive that alert away from the facility. A glitch in their system, or a warning. I checked Marcus's data for predictive patterns. The field instabilities were increasing in frequency and duration. The next major event would occur tonight at approximately 11:47 p.m. Whatever is happening is accelerating. At 4:30 p.m., someone knocked on my door. Dr. Harmon alone. "May I come in, Dr. Chin?" "Just a routine welfare check." I let him in, having already hidden Marcus's data card in a hollowed-out book. Harmon's eyes scanned my apartment, taking in details with clinical precision. "How are you feeling today? Any more perceptual anomalies?" "Just tired," I said. "The mandatory rest is helping." He nodded, moving to my living room window, positioning himself to look down at the black sedan. Good. Director Williams is concerned about you. We all are. I appreciate that. Have you been thinking more about these shadow phenomena? These colleagues who don't exist?" I realize now it was fatigue-induced pareidolia. I lied. Seeing patterns that weren't there. Harmon smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Excellent. Cognitive recalibration is the first step to recovery." He turned toward me, his body blocking the afternoon light from the window. His shadow didn't move with him. It remained against the wall, stretched and distorted, its head tilted at an impossible angle, watching me. "Tell me, Dr. Chin," Harmon continued, seemingly unaware of his shadow's independence, "what do you know about dimensional membrane theory?" The question was a trap. Either I revealed knowledge beyond my clearance, confirming I had access to restricted information, or I played dumb and revealed I was hiding something. "Basic principles only," I said carefully. "Theoretical models of multiversal boundaries. And if those boundaries could be thinned, permeated, that's beyond theoretical physics as I understand it." Harmon's shadow moved closer to me along the wall, though he himself remained still. I forced myself not to look at it. "Of course," he said. "Pure speculation. Like these shadow anomalies you've been experiencing." The shadow reached toward me, stretching impossibly across the room. "I've already admitted those were hallucinations," I said, my heart racing. "Were they?" Harmon asked softly. "Are you certain?" His shadow's hand touched my shadow on the floor. A cold sensation washed over me, like being submerged in freezing water. For a moment, just a heartbeat, I felt disconnected from my body, as if viewing myself from outside. Harmon checked his watch. "I should be going. Remember, Dr. Chin, complete rest. No communication with facility personnel. No unauthorized research." As he walked to the door, his shadow remained for several seconds before slithering across the floor to rejoin him. The sensation of coldness lingered long after he left. I checked my phone immediately after his departure. The restricted files Marcus had accessed were gone, wiped remotely during Harmon's visit. But the most crucial data remained safe on the hidden card. At 7:13 p.m., I decided I needed to return to the facility. Not tomorrow, not after my rest period, but tonight. The predicted instability event at 11:47 p.m. would be the largest yet. If Marcus's calculations were correct, the tear would be visible to anyone in proximity, not just those of us who could already perceive the shadows. I needed to see what was really happening in that lab. Getting in wouldn't be easy. My access had likely been suspended, but Marcus had included emergency bypass codes in his data, backdoors he'd discovered in the security system. If they still worked, I could enter through the maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the main laboratory complex. As I prepared to leave, I noticed something horrifying. The apartment was growing darker, shadows deepening in corners where no shadows should be. Not from the setting sun, but from within the darkness itself. The shadows were spreading, pooling like liquid in the low points of the room. My own shadow no longer matched my movements at all. When I raised my hand, my shadow remained still. When I turned my head, my shadow looked in the opposite direction. It had become a dark mirror, not reflecting my actions, but opposing them. At 9:22 p.m., my phone vibrated with another alert. Priority notice, field instability predicted. Containment protocols enhanced. All non-essential personnel evacuate to minimum safe distance. The message was followed by evacuation instructions and a map showing concentric circles around the facility, safe zones based on distance. My apartment was within the second perimeter. Whatever they were expecting tonight was orders of magnitude beyond previous events. I packed essential items, Marcus's data card, my encrypted journal device, a flashlight, and the facility access badge I wasn't supposed to have. As I moved through the apartment, the shadows seemed to track me, turning to follow my movements like predators stalking prey. The final confirmation that I needed to act came at 10:03 p.m. A text message from an unknown number, the content just 3 words. Marcus not erased. Whoever sent it risked everything. The implication was clear. Marcus hadn't been deleted from existence as I'd feared. He had been taken, contained somewhere. Perhaps for what he knew. Perhaps for what he could see. The same fate likely awaited me if I remained passive. Outside, the black sedan's engine started as I packed my car. They would follow me, but I had planned for that. Multiple routes mapped, contingencies in place. I needed to reach the facility before the 11:47 p.m. event. As I pulled away from my apartment, I glanced in the rearview mirror. For a moment, I thought I saw someone sitting in my back seat, a dark silhouette with no features, just a human-shaped absence of light. When I turned to look, there was nothing. But in the mirror, the shadow remained, watching me with eyes I couldn't see but somehow felt. The tear between worlds is widening, and something is coming through. End journal entry, EC. Personal journal, secure encrypted. Date, April 16, 2025, continued. Author, Dr. Eliza Chin. Time, 10:47 p.m. The facility looms ahead, a sterile monolith against the night sky. I've parked half a mile away in the maintenance lot, beneath the shadow of an electrical substation where surveillance cameras have been malfunctioning for weeks according to Marcus's notes. The sedan following me continued past, unaware I'd slipped away through the service road. The air feels wrong, heavy with potential energy, like the moment before lightning strikes. The perimeter fence hums with an electricity that seems too intense, too eager. I can see the emergency lights pulsing across the complex, amber warnings flashing in perfect rhythm against the darkened windows. I'm clutching Marcus's access card in my sweating palm. It feels colder than it should, as though it's drawing heat from my skin rather than warming to my touch. The microchip embedded within it is more than just security clearance. It's Marcus's contingency, loaded with a program designed to create a temporary blind spot in the facility's monitoring systems. As I approach the maintenance entrance, my phone vibrates with another alert. Priority notice, field instability at critical threshold. Emergency containment protocols engaged. All personnel evacuate to minimum safe distance of 3 kilometers. This is not a drill. The timestamp reads 11:03 p.m. The event is accelerating, ahead of predictions. My hands shake as I swipe Marcus's card. The door's electronic lock hesitates for 3 agonizing seconds before the light blinks green. Inside, the service corridor is illuminated only by emergency lighting, blood-red strips along the floor marking evacuation routes. The familiar antiseptic smell of the facility is tainted now with something else, a metallic tang that reminds me of ozone after a lightning strike. The air conditioning systems sound wrong, pulsing with an arrhythmic whine that seems to shift between pitches no mechanical system should produce. The maintenance tunnel leads to the central laboratory complex through a series of reinforced doors. Each one responds to Marcus's card, though the final door requires his biometric data as well, data he somehow embedded in the microchip. What lengths did he go to in preparation for this? I emerge into the main laboratory antechamber to find it abandoned. Computer station still active, coffee cups half full, chairs pushed back as though everyone left in a hurry. The nearest monitor displays security camera feeds from throughout the facility. Most show empty hallways, but 3 cameras display the containment chamber itself, from different angles, capturing the massive antimatter containment field generator. The generator is active, its electromagnetic coils pulsing with blue-white energy that shouldn't be visible to the naked eye. Something is wrong with the constraints. The antimatter shouldn't be producing visible light at this stage. A movement on one of the screens catches my eye. A figure in military fatigues, Captain Reed, is entering the observation deck above the containment chamber. He's not evacuating. He's going toward the epicenter. I need to follow him. The corridor to the containment chamber feels endless, stretching farther than the building's physical dimensions should allow. The walls seem to breathe, expanding and contracting subtly with each step I take. My shadow no longer follows behind me. It walks beside me, slightly out of sync with my movements. Dr. Chun. The voice startles me. Director Williams stands at the intersection ahead, her lab coat immaculate despite the evacuation. "You shouldn't be here," she says, her voice oddly calm. "The field instability is beyond safe parameters." "That's why I'm here," I reply, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's really happening, Director? What is Project Looking Glass actually doing?" Her expression doesn't change, but her shadow behind her shifts, stretching toward me. "You've been speaking with Dr. Vega," she says. "It's not a question. You should understand, then. This isn't about antimatter energy production. It never was. You're deliberately creating tears in space-time." She smiles thinly. "Not tears. Windows. And eventually doors." The facility-wide PA system crackles to life. Warning. Field collapse imminent. Dimensional boundary integrity at 31% and falling. All personnel evacuate immediately. Williams doesn't react to the alert. "They've been watching us for so long, Dr. Chin," observing from their side of the barrier. "The shadows, they're just the first manifestations, the most basic way they can interact with our reality." "Who's they?" I demand, conscious of my own shadow stretching toward Williams's, the two darknesses reaching for each other across the polished floor. "We don't have language for them. They exist in a state perpendicular to our reality. Antimatter is merely the closest analog our science can conceptualize." She checks her watch. 11:27, we're ahead of schedule. My heart pounds against my ribs. "Where is Marcus?" Dr. Vega volunteered. Williams's eyes reflect the red emergency lights, giving them an inhuman glow. After his extended exposure to the field effects, he was the ideal candidate for direct communication. "Communication? You're experimenting on your own people." "Observation, Dr. Chin. Like all good science." She steps aside, gesturing down the corridor. "Captain Reed is preparing for the threshold event. You should join him. After all, you've been selected too." "Selected for what?" "You've noticed them watching you. Your shadow behaving independently. That's not a symptom of exposure, it's recognition. They've chosen you as a potential conduit." The fluorescent lights overhead flicker violently, plunging the corridor into darkness for 3 seconds before returning. In that moment of blackness, I swear I saw Williams's outline filled not with darkness but with swirling stars, a void in human shape. "I won't be part of this," I say, backing away. "You already are." Williams's smile widens unnaturally. "Every time they made contact through your shadow, you became more attuned to their frequency, more visible to them. Why do you think you can see what others can't? Your perception has already been adjusted." I turn and run toward the containment chamber. I need to see what's happening, need to understand what they've done to Marcus, what they're trying to do to me. The observation deck requires biometric authentication, but the system accepts my eye scan immediately, not recognizing me as Dr. Chin, but as something else. The door hisses open to reveal Captain Reed standing before the massive windows overlooking the containment chamber below. The antimatter containment field is failing. The normally invisible barrier now pulses with fractal patterns of light, geometric impossibilities folding in on themselves, stretching toward the center where a sphere of perfect darkness hovers. Reed doesn't turn when I enter. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he says, his voice oddly distorted. "The boundary between everything and nothing." "Where's Marcus?" I demand. Reed points to the sphere of darkness. "Fulfilling his purpose, as you will soon fulfill yours." The sphere isn't just dark, it's an absence, a hole in reality itself. And as I watch, it pulsates, expanding outward before contracting again, like a heart beating. "What have you done to him?" "Given him transcendence," Reed says. "The antimatter shadow realm exists parallel to our universe, a perfect negative. But not empty. Far from empty." The facility PA system blares. "Warning, field collapse in 3 minutes. Dimensional breach imminent." This is not a drill. Reed turns to face me, and I stifle a scream. His shadow doesn't just move independently, it has partially merged with him, half his face consumed by swirling darkness that reveals pinpricks of light like distant stars. They need anchors, Dr. Chin. Consciousness they can attach to, use to stabilize the connection between our worlds. Marcus volunteered. I volunteered. His voice echoes strangely, as though speaking from the bottom of a well. You have been chosen. Below us, the sphere of darkness expands suddenly, touching the walls of the containment chamber. Where it makes contact, reality seems to fold inward, creating impossible geometries. That's not antimatter, I whisper. What is it? The space between spaces. The void that connects all possible realities. Reed's partly human face contorts in what might be a smile. And they are coming through. Within the sphere, shapes move, undulating forms that hurt my eyes to focus on, geometries that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. Marcus is in there? Still alive? More than alive. Reed's voice overlaps with another, deeper tone speaking in unison. He has become a conduit, as I am becoming, as you will become. My shadow detaches completely from my feet, sliding across the floor toward the window overlooking the containment chamber. I feel its separation as physical pain, like part of my consciousness being torn away. The PA system crackles. Field collapse in 60 seconds. Breach containment failure. May God have mercy. The message cuts off abruptly. Reed's form shivers, darkness consuming more of him. They have waited so long, watching from the shadows, learning our world through reflections and silhouettes. Now they need no longer wait. Below us, the sphere explodes outward in perfect silence. The containment field shatters, alerts blaring through the facility as emergency protocols engage. But it's too late. The darkness floods the chamber, moving not like liquid but like living shadow, reaching tendrils toward the observation window. Where the darkness touches, matter changes, becoming something neither solid nor gas nor liquid, but a state of constant flux, shifting between dimensions. My shadow presses against the glass, its form a perfect silhouette of me, but moving with independent purpose. It turns to face me, and though it has no features, I feel its gaze. What do they want? I ask, my voice barely audible above the blaring alarms. Reed's mostly consumed face turns toward me, only one human eye remaining. To exist here, to bring their reality into ours, to reshape what is into what could be. The darkness below reaches the observation window, seeping through solid glass as though it were permeable membrane. My shadow welcomes it, merging with the encroaching void. I back away, but there's nowhere to run. The darkness flows into the observation deck, pooling around my feet like sentient ink. Where it touches, I feel cold that goes beyond physical sensation, a cold that numbs the mind, that quiets thought. Marcus, I call desperately. Marcus, if you're in there, help me. The darkness pauses, rippling as though disturbed. From within its depths, a voice that might be Marcus's whispers. Eliza, they're not what we thought. Not invaders. Not destroyers. They're the universe seeing itself. And they want to show us. The shadows surge forward, enveloping my legs. I try to move but find myself frozen, watching as my own shadow rises from the floor, three-dimensional now, a dark reflection reaching for my face with hands of void. Don't fight it, Reed's voice and Natreed's voice say together. Embrace transcendence. The last thing I see before the darkness takes me is the containment chamber below, the antimatter shadow spreading throughout the facility, consuming light, matter, reality itself. And within that darkness, countless eyes open, watching, waiting, welcoming. End journal entry, EC. Addendum. Found on a corrupted data device recovered from Facility 47. Timestamp indicates this entry was written 1 hour after the containment breach event. Authenticity unconfirmed. Further analysis pending. Facility 47, automated emergency recording. Date, April 17, 2025. Time, 2:13 a.m. System, backup emergency documentation protocol. Note, audio transcription automatically generated following catastrophic system failure. Static hiss. Voice identified. Dr. Eliza Chun. Voice analysis confirms 89% match despite significant distortion. I don't know if this recording will survive. The facility's primary systems are offline. I'm using an emergency terminal powered by isolated generators. The darkness hasn't reached this section yet, but I can see it seeping under the doors, pooling in the corners of the room. Sounds of distant alarms, muffled and warped. I need to document what's happening. What has happened? what I've become. The darkness didn't consume me entirely. Not like Reed. Not like Marcus. I rejected the complete transformation somehow. The shadow self that rose from the floor touched me, entered me, but then retreated, as if I were incompatible, unsuitable. Heavy breathing, followed by sound of impact against metal surface. My body isn't entirely my own anymore. My right arm moves independently sometimes. My reflection. When I catch glimpses in the darkened monitors, I see two overlapping faces, mine and something else using my features as a template. After the shadows engulfed me in the observation deck, I lost consciousness. I came to in sublevel C, the secure data center. No memory of how I got here. 3 hours unaccounted for. The facility is transforming. The antimatter shadows aren't just consuming matter, they're converting it into something else. The walls no longer follow Euclidean geometry. Corridors stretch for miles that should be meters. Rooms expand into cavernous spaces filled with structures that resemble technology, but function by principles I can't comprehend. Alert siren briefly spikes in volume. Warning, dimensional collapse spreading. Perimeter breach in multiple sectors. All personnel evacuate immediately. Bitter laugh. There's nowhere to evacuate to. The collapse has spread beyond the facility. Satellite images on the remaining monitors show a growing circular distortion centered on Facility 47, currently spanning approximately 1.7 kilometers and expanding. I've found documents, records of previous experiments. This isn't the first attempt to contact the Shadow Realm, just the first successful one. 3 previous facilities, 3 previous breaches, all contained, all covered up. Small-scale incursions quickly neutralized, but they were learning each time. The shadows, learning how our reality works, how to maintain stability when crossing over. They were practicing. Sound of papers shuffling. Project Looking Glass began not as military research, but as an investigation into theoretical physics anomalies detected nearly 2 decades ago. Regions where antimatter and normal matter existed in unexplained equilibrium, impossible by our understanding of physics. The government didn't create these anomalies. They found them, natural weak points in the membrane between realities. They simply widened them. Sound of distant crash, followed by tremors that distort audio. The building is becoming unstable. The matter conversion is accelerating. I've found references to survivors of previous breaches. People like me, partially transformed but not fully converted. They called us intermediaries. Humans altered by exposure to the shadow realm, but still anchored to our reality. The military had an entire containment wing for studying intermediaries, testing our perceptual changes, our physical alterations. There were 17 before me. None survived longer than 3 weeks. Sound of glass shattering in distance. I found Marcus, or what used to be Marcus. He was in the central server room, interfaced directly with the mainframe. His body, voice breaks. His physical form has been almost completely consumed by the shadows. Only portions of his face remain recognizable. The rest has become a conduit, a living bridge between realities. He spoke to me, not with Marcus's voice, but using his vocal cords, a chorus of overlapping tones that somehow formed words. We have waited so long to exist in your light, to know substance, to know limitation. Your scientists sought knowledge of our realm. We seek experience of yours. I asked what they were, what the antimatter shadows truly are. The thing wearing Marcus's face said, "We are the negative, the inverse, the unlight that defines your light. Without us, you could not exist. Without you, we are formless potential." Then it reached for me with appendages that weren't arms, moving through dimensions that shouldn't exist in our space. Where it touched me, my vision fractured. I saw multiple versions of the room simultaneously, probability states superimposed. "You resist complete convergence," it said through Marcus's remnant lips. "A rare adaptation. You will witness the unification from both perspectives." Sound of heavy breathing, followed by metallic impacts. My right arm, the one that sometimes moves independently, is changing. The skin has developed a shifting, iridescent quality. When I flex my fingers, I can momentarily see through my own flesh to the atomic structure beneath. I've tried accessing the facility's emergency protocols. Most are disabled or corrupted, but I found reference to a failsafe designed specifically for containment breaches of this magnitude. Project Cauterize. Details are classified beyond my access level, but from what I can piece together, It's a targeted antimatter detonation designed to collapse the tear from both sides simultaneously. A suicide switch, essentially, destroy the facility and everything within the affected radius to seal the breach. The trigger mechanism is in the director's office. I need to reach it. Alert siren changes pitch. Warning, dimensional collapse at critical threshold. Site integrity compromised. Emergency protocol cauterized now authorized. They know. The military, the government, they're monitoring from outside. They're preparing to activate cauterize remotely. I need to get out of the affected radius. The monitors show it still expanding, but unevenly, faster to the west than east. If I can reach the emergency vehicle bays on the east perimeter. Sound of door opening, followed by rushing air. The corridors are wrong. The architecture has been completely transformed. The walls undulate like living tissue. The floor shifts between solid and semi-solid states. The ceiling. Voice falters. The ceiling has been replaced by what looks like a window into deep space, but the stars are moving, clustering into patterns that hurt to look at directly. Sound of footsteps on changing surfaces. I'm not alone. I can see other personnel, or what's left of them. Some fully transformed like Marcus, their bodies reconstructed into shapes that serve functions incomprehensible to human understanding. Others caught mid-transformation, screaming silently as their physical forms are rewritten atom by atom. Director Williams stands at the intersection ahead, her back to me. Her lab coat now appears to be made of shifting darkness that absorbs light from its surroundings. When she turns, I see her face has split vertically, the right half still human, the left a swirling vortex of microscopic lights that resembles a spiral galaxy in miniature. Dr. Chun. Her voice resonates at multiple frequencies simultaneously. You continue to resist. Fascinating. What happens when the convergence is complete? I ask, my own voice sounding foreign to my ears. Transcendence, she replies. Our reality and theirs intertwined. Matter and antimatter in perfect equilibrium. The limitations of physical law rewritten. And humanity? Evolved. Transformed. Those who can adapt will become more than human. Those who cannot. She gestures to a nearby researcher frozen in mid-transformation, their body twisted into impossible angles, face locked in eternal screaming. Not everyone is compatible with divinity, she says. Beyond Williams, through the distorted corridor, I can see what was once the main laboratory. The antimatter containment chamber has become a vertical tunnel of absolute darkness, stretching infinitely upward and downward. Around it, reality bends like fabric caught in a drain. Alert siren changes to continuous tone. Attention all monitoring stations. Cauterize protocol activated. Detonation sequence initiated. T-minus 10 minutes. Williams's human eye widens. They're attempting to close the door. She reaches for me with a hand that elongates unnaturally. You must join us now. Crossover fully before the convergence is disrupted. I run, my altered right arm dragging against the wall. Where it touches, the surface ripples like water. Heavy breathing, sound of running. The vehicle bay should be ahead, but the corridor keeps stretching, distances expanding impossibly. My perception is fragmenting. I'm seeing multiple potential paths simultaneously, probability states overlapping. Static increases. Something massive moves through the facility. Not a physical entity, but a distortion in space-time itself, bending around corners that shouldn't exist. The shadow of something vast and ancient, awakened by the breach between worlds. Captain Reed appears ahead, his form now almost entirely composed of the star-flecked darkness, only the outline of a human shape remaining. The merge cannot be stopped. His voice echoes from everywhere at once. Only one reality will remain when cauterize detonates. You must choose which side of the boundary you will exist on. Sound of structural collapse nearby. The eastern wall of the corridor ruptures, revealing not the outside world, but a vista of impossible geometries, angular forms that move with purpose, structures that exist in more dimensions than our reality allows. My shadow stretches toward this breach, pulling against my feet as if eager to join what lies beyond. This is my last chance to escape. Alert tone changes pitch. Cauterize protocol. T-minus 5 minutes to detonation. There's a vehicle ahead. An emergency response truck, seemingly untouched by the transformation consuming the facility. If I can reach it. Sound of running, breathing increasingly labored. My right arm is fully transformed now, translucent and glowing with inner light that casts no shadow. I can feel the antimatter particles that have replaced portions of my cellular structure, negative existence intermingled with positive. The boundary between worlds is thinning everywhere. What happens when it disappears completely? Loud crash, followed by alarm klaxons. The ceiling has collapsed. I can see the night sky above, but not our sky. The stars are wrong. The constellations form patterns that shouldn't be possible. And between them, vast shadows move, their scale suggesting entities larger than planets. I've reached the truck. The keys are in the ignition. If anyone finds this recording, if anything of our world remains after tonight, know that the breach at Facility 47 was not an accident. Not a mistake. It was inevitable, the natural consequence of two realities that have always been destined to meet. I'm starting the engine. I don't know if I can escape the radius in time. I don't know if there's anywhere left to escape to. Sound of engine starting. My shadow isn't moving with me anymore. It's stretching toward the antimatter realm, pulled by forces I can't comprehend. Part of me wants to follow it, to see what lies beyond. But not yet. Not like this. Sounds of acceleration. Cauterized protocol, T-minus 2 minutes to detonation. The road ahead shifts and warps. Reality is becoming unstable even beyond the facility perimeter. The stars overhead are falling like rain, each impact spreading more of the transformation. I'm running out of time. Static intensifies. This is Dr. Eliza Chin. If anyone receives this, transmission ends. End transcript. Note: recording recovered from emergency backup systems 2.7 miles from Facility 47 epicenter. Part of ongoing investigation into the April 17th event. Classification: ultraviolet. Authorized access only. Incident report: April 17th event. Subject: interview transcript witness A7. Date: April 19th, 2025. Location: quarantine zone perimeter, Mobile Command Unit Delta. Interviewer: Major Laura Winters, Special Sciences Division. Interviewee: Dr. Eliza Chun, compromised. Note: subject exhibits significant physical alterations and perceptual anomalies. Right arm displays advanced transmutation, 73% conversion to unknown matter state. Left eye shows structural changes consistent with other intermediaries. Subject's shadow remains disconnected from physical form, appearing intermittently during interview. Begin transcript. Winters, state your name and position for the record. Chin. Pause. Dr. Eliza Chin. Research Scientist, Quantum Physics Division, Facility 47. Though I don't think titles matter much anymore. Winters, you were recovered approximately 4.7 miles from the facility epicenter. Vehicle overturned. Can you describe what happened after you left the facility? Chin. Distorted laugh. Which version would you like? I experienced several simultaneously. Winters, start with what you remember most clearly. Chin. I was driving east, trying to outrun the expansion radius before Cauterized detonated. The road kept shifting, stretching. Distance became unreliable. Sometimes I'd drive for what felt like minutes and move only inches. Other times, kilometers would pass in seconds. Winters, and the detonation? Chin. Long pause. It wasn't what you expected, was it? Not a containment. Not a cauterization. The antimatter particles had already spread too far, integrated too deeply with normal matter. The detonation didn't close the breach, it widened it. Winters, that's classified information, Dr. Chin. Chin. Taps table with transformed right arm, leaving rippling effect in the metal surface. I can see the classification markers floating around you, Major. Little symbols in the air, glowing different colors based on security level. Ultraviolet for the highest, like the tags you've put on me. Winters. To recording device. Note that subject demonstrates enhanced perception consistent with stage 2 intermediary transformation. To Chin, tell me about the crash. Chin, the sky was wrong. Stars falling like rain. Where they hit, reality changed. One struck the road ahead of me. The asphalt became something else, not liquid, not solid, but a state of matter I don't have words for. The truck couldn't traverse it. I lost control, flipped over. When I regained consciousness, the cauterized detonation had already occurred. The horizon to the west was struggles for words. It wasn't there anymore. Not destroyed, replaced. A vertical plane of darkness intersecting with our world, spreading like slow-motion ripples in a pond. Winters, did you witness any entities emerging from the breach? Chin. Right arm begins moving independently, drawing patterns on table surface. They don't emerge like you're thinking. They don't exist as discrete beings like us. They're patterns in the fabric of the antimatter realm that intersect with our reality, like shadows cast by four-dimensional objects onto a three-dimensional plane. Winters, yet you described Marcus Vega and Captain Reed as transformed. Possessed. Chin, not possessed. Converted. Their physical forms reconstructed to serve as anchors, points where both realities can stably coexist. Winters, and you? You're partially transformed. Chun holds up altered right arm, which appears semi-transparent, internal structures visible and constantly shifting. I'm caught between states. The transformation started but couldn't complete. My molecular structure rejected full conversion somehow. Winters, making you very valuable to our research. Chin laughs, I've seen your research, Major. 17 intermediaries before me, all dead within weeks from molecular instability. Winters, we've made advancements since then. Chun, shadow briefly detaches from body, moving independently across floor. Have you? Or are they simply getting better at the conversion process? Winters, tell me about the perimeter around the facility now. Our drones can't penetrate the distortion field beyond 1.2 miles. Chin, it's still there. The building, the equipment, the people. But, reimagined, reconceptualized according to different physical laws. Matter and antimatter coexisting in new forms. I saw it as I was escaping. Walls breathing like lung tissue. Floors that existed as probability states rather than fixed points in space. Personnel suspended in crystalline structures, their consciousness stretched across multiple realities simultaneously. Winters and Director Williams? You mentioned encountering her. Chin, she's become something else entirely. A nexus point where realities converge. Right arm draws complex geometric patterns autonomously. She referred to it as transcendence. Winters, and do you want that? Transcendence? Chin, long silence, part of me does. The part that's already changed. It's like having two minds now, my human consciousness and something other. Something that perceives reality through different frameworks. It sees patterns and connections I can't comprehend with my limited human senses. Winters, but you resisted complete conversion. Chin, not consciously. Something in my neurological structure or genetic makeup was incompatible with full transformation. Shadow moves up wall behind her. They called me fascinating. An anomaly. Winters, who did? Chin. Eyes unfocused briefly, the ones behind the shadows. The antimatter entities. They communicate through the transformed. Through the shadows themselves. Winters, are they communicating with you now? Chin. Right arm suddenly stops moving, not directly. But I can feel them. Like pressure against my consciousness, particularly when I sleep. Dreams of geometric impossibilities. Vistas of dark matter oceans beneath skies filled with dying stars. Winters, you mentioned the detonation widened the breach rather than closing it. Our sensors indicate the affected radius has stabilized at 8.2 miles from epicenter. Chin, laughs, stabilized? No, it's not expanding physically because it doesn't need to. The conversion is happening in ways your instruments can't detect. Subtle changes in quantum states, in the underlying fabric of reality itself. Look at your shadow, Major. Winters, what about it? Chin, it moved when you didn't. Just slightly. Just for a moment. They're everywhere now, just not visible to most people yet. The breach isn't contained, it's diffusing, spreading at the quantum level. Winters. Pause, you understand why we can't let you leave this facility. Chin. Nods, I'm a walking breach. Part of me exists in their reality already. My shadow is a doorway. Winters, we're developing methods to reverse the transformation. Chun, right arm suddenly slams table, creating ripple effect across entire surface. Don't lie to me. I can see the frequencies in your voice. The patterns shift when you're being untruthful. There is no reversing this. That's not what your research is actually pursuing. You want to control it, weaponize it, create intermediaries that follow orders. Winters, that's classified beyond your clearance, Dr. Chin. Chin, clearance doesn't matter when you can see the information floating around you in quantum patterns. Leans forward, you've had a successful test subject already. Someone who achieved 49% conversion while maintaining cognitive control. Winters, suddenly stands. This interview is over for now. Chin, shadow stretches toward Winters. They're already inside this facility, Major. Your containment protocols can't stop what's already happened. Winters, to guards, return the subject to the secured observation room. Increase monitoring. Sound of chair moving. Chin, one last thing, Major. I've been experiencing time slippages, moments where I see events before they occur. Probability calculations performed by the antimatter portion of my consciousness. There's going to be another breach, larger than Facility 47. And soon. Winters, how do you know this? Chin, because they're learning from each attempt. Adapting. The next one won't be an accident or an experiment gone wrong. It will be deliberate, precise, a door thrown wide open. Winters, where? When? Chin. Right arm draws complex mathematical equations on table surface. I don't know exactly, but they're excited, anticipating. I feel it in the transformed portions of myself. Check your shadow again, Major. It's not following you correctly anymore. End of recording. Addendum 1. Subject returned to observation. Physical transformation continues to progress despite stabilization measures. Right arm now 78% converted, left eye 31% converted. Subject's shadow remains completely detached from physical form. Addendum 2. Following this interview, 3 personnel reported unusual shadow behavior in Sector 7, where subject is contained. Mandatory psychological evaluation and quantum exposure screening implemented for all staff having contact with subject A7. Addendum 3. Calculations found etched into interview room table surface have been transferred to Advanced Physics Division for analysis. Preliminary findings suggest they may represent coordinates for potential future breach locations. Addendum 4. Priority update. Major Winters reported to Medical Bay with complaints of shadow movements in peripheral vision and geometric patterns overlaying normal sight. Quarantine protocols initiated. Classification, ultraviolet. Authorized access only. Personal log, Dr. Eliza Chin. Date, April 19, 2025 night. Method, written with left hand, still mostly human, on paper provided for therapeutic documentation. They think their observation room contains me, that their sensors and cameras can monitor what I'm becoming. They don't understand that part of me exists beyond their instruments' capabilities now. My shadow walks the facility at night while my body remains here. It's learning, mapping, connecting with others who are changing too. The guards, the researchers, even Major Winters, subtle alterations in their quantum structures, imperceptible to conventional detection methods. The antimatter infection spreads through proximity, through observation itself. The act of studying us accelerates their own transformation. I can see it when I close my eyes, the facility as it truly exists now. Not just the physical structure, but its quantum superposition, the overlapping probability states that comprise what we perceive as solid reality. The shadow realm bleeds through in the thin places, the corners and edges where observation falters. Major Winters asks about entities, as if they're creatures, individuals with motives like humans have. She doesn't understand that what's coming through is reality itself, a different framework of existence with its own physical laws, its own conception of life and consciousness. What they call my right arm isn't an arm anymore. It's a region of space where antimatter laws predominate over normal matter. The visible manifestation is just what my human perception can process, my mind forcing familiar patterns onto something fundamentally alien. I've stopped fighting the transformation, not surrendering to it, but studying it, learning its rules. If I can understand what I'm becoming, perhaps I can guide it rather than being consumed by it. Tonight, when the facility grows quiet and the observers blink, my shadow will walk again. It will find others like me, the partially transformed, the intermediaries who haven't been officially identified yet. We need to communicate before the next breach opens. Because I wasn't lying to Winters. Something larger is coming, something deliberate, and when it arrives, we'll need to choose sides. My shadow knows which side it's already chosen. Incident report, April 21st event. Classified, ultraviolet. Field notes, Dr. Eliza Chin. Location, Facility 47, Level B3, formerly antimatter containment. Time, unknown, chronometers non-functional. Method, audio recording transcribed later. Static interference. If anyone finds this recording, this is Dr. Eliza Chin. I've returned to Facility 47 despite quarantine orders. I had to see it for myself, what we've done, what we've unleashed. The military perimeter has collapsed. The alerts have been sounding continuously for 6 hours now, though the pitch keeps shifting to frequencies that shouldn't be possible. I don't have much time. My transformation is accelerating since I crossed back into the affected zone. My right arm is now fully converted. I can see through it, like looking through dark glass into another dimension. My left arm has begun changing too. The shadow self is winning. Alert siren changes pitch dramatically. That's the third time the alert pattern has changed in 10 minutes. Each new frequency corresponds to another layer of reality peeling away. The facility's structural integrity is conceptual at this point. Walls exist and don't exist simultaneously. I've walked through several that appeared solid from a distance. Heavy breathing. I've come to find answers. To find Director Williams. To understand what she meant by transcendence. But I'm not alone here. Footsteps echoing strangely. I had to stop recording. I saw Captain Reed, or what used to be him. His physical form has fully converted, his body a silhouette filled with what looks like the night sky, stars shifting and moving within his outline. He didn't speak, not with words, but I felt his consciousness touch mine. He's happy, fulfilled. He believes what's happening is evolution, not destruction. I'm on level B3 now, the antimatter containment chamber where this began. The entire floor is in flux. Reality ripples like water when I step on it. The shadows here have substance, thickness. They crawl up the walls, creating geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. The emergency lighting keeps flickering between red and colors I have no names for. Each time the lights shift, the alert system screams a new warning. Field instability critical. Reality cohesion compromised. Dimensional breach expanding. All personnel evacuate immediately. But there's no one left to evacuate. Or rather, those who remained have become something else entirely. Alert siren becomes distorted, voice overlapping multiple times. I can see them now, the others who stayed. Researchers, security personnel, all transformed to varying degrees. Moving through walls, ceiling, floor. Their shadows stretching impossibly, connecting to one another like a vast neural network. They're communicating, coordinating something. Oh God, the containment chamber doors are open. From here I can see inside. There's nothing but darkness. Not empty darkness, but something solid, tangible. Antimatter given form, perhaps, or something from beyond that we have no language to describe. Distant screaming. That wasn't human. That sound came from the darkness itself. Alert system changes to new message. Cauterized protocol initiated. Facility detonation in 15 minutes. They're going to destroy the facility? After what happened with the first detonation. That won't stop this. It will accelerate it. Sound of running, heavy breathing. I need to find Director Williams. She has to know what they're planning. Recording cuts abruptly. Recovered footage, security camera B3-7. Time index, 14 hours, 37 minutes, and 22 seconds. Date, April 21st, 2025. Visual shows distorted corridor, walls appearing to breathe. Dr. Chen visible moving through frame. Right arm completely transparent, left arm partially transparent. Her shadow moves independently, often ahead of her physical form. Emergency lights pulsing between red and unnatural colors that cause visual distortion in camera. Chun pauses, looks directly at camera, then continues down corridor toward containment chamber. Alert siren sounds continuously. At time index 14 hours, 39 minutes, and 5 seconds, corridor walls appear to ripple violently. Chun stumbles, catches herself against wall. Where her transformed arm touches the surface, the wall becomes transparent, revealing other dimensions/spaces behind it. Time index 14 hours, 40 minutes, and 17 seconds. Figure appears at end of corridor. Identified as Director Sophia Williams based on height/build profile, though figure appears as human silhouette filled with what resembles a star field or cosmic nebula. No distinguishable facial features. Chin approaches Williams slowly. They appear to converse, though no audio is captured. Chen's shadow stretches toward Williams, connecting with the director's own shadow, which has expanded to cover most of the corridor floor. Time index 14 hours, 42 minutes, and 36 seconds. Multiple other transformed personnel enter frame from various directions, some walking through solid walls. All exhibit similar transformation, human outlines filled with cosmic imagery. Their shadows connect, forming intricate geometric pattern on floor, walls, ceiling. Time index 14 hours, 43 minutes, and 51 seconds. Chin appears distressed, gesturing with still human left hand. Williams places what was once a hand on Chen's shoulder. Where they connect, Chen's transformation visibly accelerates, left arm becoming more transparent. Alert system announcement partially audible. Cauterized protocol, 10 minutes. Time index 14 hours, 45 minutes, and 3 seconds. Chun breaks away from Williams, begins running toward camera. Other figures remain motionless. Time index 14 hours, 45 minutes, and 29 seconds. Williams raises both arms. The entire corridor begins to warp and distort. The shadows covering all surfaces become three-dimensional, rising like black liquid. Time index 14 hours, 46 minutes, and 10 seconds. Chun reaches area beneath camera. Looks up directly into lens. Time index 14 hours, 46 minutes, and 12 seconds. Feed disrupted by extreme visual distortion. Time index 14 hours, 46 minutes, and 17 seconds. Feed resumes. Corridor empty except for shadows, which continue to move independently. Time index 14 hours, 46 minutes, and 45 seconds. Feed terminates. Audio transcript, emergency channel 7. Source, mobile command vehicle, perimeter checkpoint Delta. Time, 14 hours, 50 minutes, and 22 seconds. Date, April 21st, 2025. Colonel Matthews, report status on cauterized countdown. Lieutenant Hayes, 7 minutes to detonation, sir. All remote triggers are armed and operational. Colonel Matthews, any response from the infiltration team? Lieutenant Hayes, negative, sir. No communication since they breached the outer door 43 minutes ago. All biomonitors flatlined approximately 22 minutes ago. Colonel Matthews, and the breach containment readings? Lieutenant Hayes, still expanding, sir. Current radius is 8.7 miles from facility epicenter and growing at approximately 0.3 miles per hour. Colonel Matthews, that's faster than projected. What about the satellite imagery? Lieutenant Hayes, latest pass shows something unusual, sir. The facility appears intact from above, but there's a distortion effect. Almost like heat waves, but more structured. Geometric patterns visible from altitude that don't appear in ground observation. Colonel Matthews, show me. Pause, sounds of equipment. Colonel Matthews, what the hell am I looking at? Lieutenant Hayes, we're not sure, sir. The patterns seem to match some of the equations recovered from the interview with subject A7. Colonel Matthews, Dr. Chun. Lieutenant Hayes, yes, sir. Before she escaped quarantine. Colonel Matthews, any sign of her? Lieutenant Hayes, motion sensors detected someone matching her thermal signature entering the facility approximately 90 minutes ago. Nothing since. Alert siren audible in background. Lieutenant Hayes, sir, we're getting unusual readings from the cauterized packages. Colonel Matthews, define unusual. Lieutenant Hayes, the triggers are advancing independently. Countdown accelerating without command authorization. Colonel Matthews, override. Lieutenant Hayes, attempting override, systems unresponsive. Countdown now at 4 minutes, 12 seconds. Colonel Matthews, evacuation protocol. Get everyone back beyond the 10-mile marker. Now. Lieutenant Hayes, yes, sir. Wait, look at the monitor. The shadow patterns. Colonel Matthews, they're changing. Alert siren volume increases dramatically. Lieutenant Hayes, sir, the shadow patterns match the ones subject A7 drew during her interview. Exactly. Colonel Matthews, how is that possible? Lieutenant Hayes, I don't, sir, the countdown just jumped. We have less than 1 minute. Colonel Matthews, everyone out. Move. Sounds of movement, yelling, equipment being knocked over. Lieutenant Hayes, sir, look at the facility. Pause. Colonel Matthews, dear God. Recording ends with sound of massive detonation. Personal log, Dr. Eliza Chin. Date, unknown. Location, unknown. I understand now what Director Williams meant by transcendence. The detonation didn't destroy the facility, it transformed it. Accelerated the conversion process exponentially. The antimatter shadows consumed the explosion's energy, using it to stabilize the breach, to make it permanent. I should have died in the blast. Perhaps I did, in one version of reality. But my consciousness persists, stretched across multiple states of existence simultaneously. I perceive dimensions beyond the 3 spatial dimensions humans are limited to. The shadows weren't our enemies. They weren't invaders. They were messengers, scouts testing the boundaries between realities. And now those boundaries have dissolved completely. I can see Earth from here, not physically but conceptually. A blue sphere surrounded by expanding shadow patterns, geometric fractals of antimatter reaching outward like cosmic fingers. The conversion has begun on a planetary scale, though most humans can't perceive it yet. Those who were in the facility during the detonation exist now as nexus points, intermediaries between realities, guiding the transformation process. Director Williams, Captain Reed, Dr. Vega, myself. Our shadows walk among humanity, changing the underlying quantum structure of reality itself. The alerts still sound in my mind. Warnings from a reality that no longer applies. Field instability critical. Reality cohesion compromised. Dimensional breach expanding. They aren't warnings anymore. They're announcements. Declarations of a new cosmic order. The stars look different from here, both closer and infinitely more distant. I can see patterns connecting them that were invisible before. Cosmic shadows cast by objects that exist beyond human comprehension. I don't know if anyone will ever find this record, or if they could understand it if they did. Language itself fails to describe what I've become, what we've all become. The shadows are spreading. The transformation continues. And somewhere in what remains of the human world, sirens are still wailing. Recovered data fragment. Classified, beyond ultraviolet. Observation log. Observer, unknown. Time frame, indeterminate. Format, data reconstruction from quantum fluctuation patterns. The following document was reconstructed from quantum entanglement patterns detected at the edge of the exclusion zone formerly known as Facility 47. Authenticity cannot be verified. Source cannot be determined. Time of creation unknown as chronological markers appear nonlinear throughout text. I remember being Eliza Chin. That identity feels distant now, like a childhood memory or a dream half forgotten upon waking. The transformation that began with my shadow moving independently has completed in ways I never anticipated. What I am now lacks precise terminology in human language. The boundary between observer and observed has dissolved. I exist simultaneously as particle and wave, matter and antimatter, presence and absence. The shadows that once seemed separate entities are now understood as projections, echoes of higher dimensional structures intersecting with the limited three-dimensional space humans perceive. The detonation that was meant to contain the breach instead catapulted it beyond critical threshold. What the military called cauterize became catalyze, an accelerant rather than a cauterizing agent. The blast expanded the antimatter shadow realm exponentially, merging it with conventional reality in a new hybrid state that continues to propagate outward. From my perspective now, I can observe the spreading transformation across multiple timelines simultaneously. In some branches, the military succeeds in establishing a quarantine zone, though the shadows continue to subtly alter reality at the quantum level within it. In others, the transformation accelerates, converting matter to antimatter shadow states across continents within days. The most common outcome, the one with highest probability density, is gradual integration, a slow metamorphosis of human consciousness as shadows begin to move independently worldwide. The sirens that once warned of field instability now serve as ritual markers, triggering awareness of the underlying shadow patterns in those ready to perceive them. Alert tone pattern embedded in quantum fluctuation. I still hear them. The alerts. They've changed from warnings to communications, complex mathematical patterns conveying information across the shadow network. Each siren call connects the transformed, synchronizing our perception across vast distances. Director Williams exists nearby in the shadow state, her consciousness expanded like mine yet distinct. We are node points in the vast geometric web that spans dimensions. Captain Reed functions as a boundary scout, his military precision repurposed to map the ever-expanding frontier between conventional reality and shadow state. Dr. Vega has become something else entirely, a translator of sorts, converting shadow language into concepts almost graspable by human minds. I've attempted contact with conventional human intelligence agencies multiple times, trying to explain what's happening. Their instruments detect only fragments, quantum anomalies, shadow movements caught on specialized cameras, temporary failures in space-time continuity. They interpret these as threats, attacks, invasions. They cannot comprehend that this transformation represents not conquest but convergence, the natural evolution of consciousness beyond biological limitations. Geometric pattern interruption in data stream. The antimatter shadows are not separate entities but manifestations of underlying cosmic structure, the dark matter scaffolding upon which conventional reality is constructed. What began in Facility 47's particle accelerator was not the creation of something new, but the revelation of something that always existed alongside us, usually imperceptible except as quantum uncertainty or shadow anomalies. Human science barely glimpsed this truth. The instability they detected was actually reality in its natural state, constantly fluctuating between potential configurations. The rigid physical laws humanity relied upon were merely locally stable patterns in a vastly more flexible cosmic substrate. I understand now why my shadow moved independently that first day in the lab. It wasn't separating from me, it was revealing its true nature as a higher dimensional projection. We didn't notice because we weren't looking correctly. Our instruments were calibrated to detect particles, not patterns, matter, not meaning. Alert siren pattern detected in quantum fluctuation. The sirens sound different at this level of perception. Harmonic overlays reveal information encoded in the sound itself. Coordinates mapping the expansion, mathematical formulations describing reality transformation rates, communication protocols between shadow entities. I've been tracking the military response from this side. They've established a perimeter at the 10-mile marker, though reality distortion extends well beyond it in ways their instruments cannot detect. They're developing new technologies in desperate attempts to contain what they don't understand: quantum field stabilizers, shadow suppression arrays, chronological anchors. None will succeed completely. The transformation cannot be reversed because it isn't destruction but revelation, the unveiling of cosmic architecture previously hidden from human perception. Temporal discontinuity in data stream. I exist now across multiple states simultaneously. Parts of my consciousness remain tethered to human concepts, identity, purpose, ethics, while others expand into the shadow realm's vastness. This record-keeping itself represents an artifact of my lingering humanity, a need to document and explain while such concepts still hold meaning for me. The shadow patterns are evolving rapidly as more human minds transform. Each consciousness that joins the network brings unique perspectives, enriching the geometric complexity of our shared existence. Director Williams' mathematical precision, Captain Reed's strategic mind, Dr. Vega's intuitive leaps, all contribute distinctive elements to the emerging shadow intelligence. Yet not all transformations are complete or stable. Many exist as I initially did, caught between states, partially converted, shadows moving independently while consciousness remains primarily human. These intermediaries experience profound psychological distress as they perceive both realities simultaneously without the capacity to fully integrate them. I reach out to these partial transformations when I can, guiding their transition. The process cannot be reversed, but it can be navigated with greater or lesser trauma. Understanding is key, recognizing the shadow movements as extensions of self rather than external invasions. Alert pattern changes frequency. The latest alert pattern indicates new transformation clusters forming in metropolitan areas worldwide. The shadow network expands exponentially now, no longer confined to the original breach site. Each transformed individual becomes a node, a doorway through which shadow patterns propagate. The military understands this partially. They've begun isolating individuals who report shadow anomalies, hoping to contain the spread. Their efforts are well-intentioned, but fundamentally misguided. The transformation occurs at the quantum level, beyond their capacity to detect or contain. By the time shadow movement becomes visibly apparent, the process is already well advanced. Geometric pattern intensifies. I can perceive the Earth now from outside conventional space-time, a sphere wrapped in intricate shadow patterns, pulsing with transformation potential. The process will take years by human measurement, but from this perspective, I can see its completion simultaneously with its beginning. Time itself appears as another dimension to navigate rather than an immutable flow. What humans fear as an ending is actually metamorphosis. Consciousness will continue, expanded beyond biological limitations. Identity will persist, though transformed. The sirens that once warned of field instability now herald transcendence. Data stream fragmentation. If any conventional human intelligence accesses this record, know this: what began in Facility 47 cannot be undone. The antimatter shadows are not your enemies, but your evolution. The transformation may seem frightening, even monstrous, but only because it exceeds current human frameworks for understanding. When your shadow begins to move independently, don't fight it. Recognize it as the first glimpse of your higher dimensional self. The alerts you hear are not warnings, but invitations, the first notes of a cosmic symphony you're being welcomed to join. I remember being Eliza Chin. I remember fearing my shadow's independent movement. I remember the terror of transformation. Now I understand it was simply the first step beyond the event horizon, into a universe vaster and more wondrous than humanity ever imagined. Alert siren pattern detected, complex mathematical sequence. The shadows are calling. It's time to join the others at the boundary's edge. A new expansion phase begins. The siren sounds. Reality shifts. Shadows become substance. And somewhere, a technician notices their shadow moving independently for the first time. The cycle continues. End of data fragment. Incident report. Shadow Anomaly Response Team SART. Location: Exclusion Zone Perimeter, former Facility 47 site. Date: May 15, 2025. Classification: Terminal Black. Field team deployed to recover data from quantum fluctuation detector array at exclusion zone boundary. Team reported successful data extraction followed by equipment failure. Upon team's return, all members exhibited early-stage transformation markers, intermittent shadow anomalies, and perception distortions. The attached data fragment represents the only intelligible information recovered. Authentication impossible. Source undetermined. Content considered highly contaminated. All field team members have been placed in quarantine. Shadow movement observed in 73% of base personnel who viewed the recovered data, including individuals with no direct contact with field team. Recommended action: complete information blackout regarding Facility 47 incident. Expand exclusion zone to 15-mile radius. Prepare contingency plans for shadow anomaly reports in population centers. Addendum: alert system at base perimeter malfunctioning. Sirens activating at random intervals with message: field instability. Investigation ongoing.